Budget polytunnels such as this one here offer great value for money, and they offer a lot of growing space under cover for a relatively low amount of money. They're really cheap, and I've been growing in these budget polytunnels now for the past 5 or 6 years, and I've had a lot of success growing in these. I've had some really good crops and good results. But with that being said though, there are quite a few things which you need to know about before you go and buy one of these. And I've done a few of these budget polytunnel reviews over the last few years, giving my opinion on them after only having them for a couple of years. But now after 6 years, what is my opinion on these? Is it the same as it was then, or has it changed? Now, in the 6 years that I've had this allotment, I've grown crops in 2 different polytunnels. I've got this polytunnel here, which is a 3 metre by 6 metre polytunnel by Birchtree, which back in 2020 cost me around £200. Now the frame itself, still going strong, no problems at all. The cover I had to replace last year. We got about 4 or 5 years out of that cover, and it was badly degraded by the time I got rid of it. This cover here is actually the cover which my mum had on her polytunnel. It was the upgraded Outsunny polytunnel which she had on her plot, which she had over there a couple of years ago. There's been development since then, but to cut a long story short, that polytunnel blew away in the wind, and the frame was completely mangled and beyond repair. The cover itself survived, and this replaced the previous cover that was on this polytunnel. 2 years old now, this cover, just about, coming up to, and it's holding up all right, needs a bit of a clean. The vents have degraded and are no good. The zips at the front have completely broken. And there are a few holes here and there in the cover. I'm starting to think that these checkered polytunnels aren't the best for letting light in. They don't seem to let much light in, especially if you've got a lot of algae growth on them. The smaller Outsunny polytunnel, which is a 3 metre by 4 metre, that I got 3 seasons out of that before the cover completely degraded and was falling apart. I've actually recently taken the cover off that, and I'm going to be reusing the frame as a fruit cage. I'm just going to be sticking netting over it, and the frame is holding up quite well, to be honest with you. But the problem, I think, is the cover. That seems to be the biggest problem with these polytunnels. The vents don't last very long, they fall through after a year or 2. Oh! Oh no! Eventually, the UV from the sun degrades these covers, and the little squares in between the checkered bits, they start to fall through and contaminate your soil. So that's not very good. That's not something you really want, is it? And they don't weigh very much. They only weigh like 20 kilos. This big polytunnel here weighs like 20 kilos. That's not a lot. A small gust of wind is more than enough to carry this across your allotment site, and your allotment neighbour could end up with a free polytunnel. And that brings me to the next point. You're going to have to do quite a lot to secure these so they don't blow away. There are many different things that you can do. You can reinforce them with different things. You can add a door if you want. I've seen a lot of people add a door to the front of the polytunnel, which provides a bit more stability. I've also seen people put rods into the ground to secure them, so they've got like an anchor to keep them secured to the ground. I buried the overlapping plastic on this polytunnel, and that has held it down. The polytunnel that was on my mum's previous plot, we didn't really secure that down very properly. We did put bricks around it, quite a lot of bricks, and I thought that that was going to keep it secure, but it wasn't. It blew away. So yeah, you're going to have to do things to make these things more secure. You're probably going to have to replace the cover after a few years, because they do degrade quite quickly, and I'd say you're probably going to get 5 to 10 years out of the frame itself before it starts to rust. This frame has been going now for nearly 6 years, and there is a bit of rust on the bolts. The bits that are touching the ground have rusted quite badly, understandably, but you know, it's got quite a few more years of life out of this, I would say. Now, if you were to go and buy a greenhouse, that will last probably 10, 15, 20 years or more. and the maintenance for that is very, very minimal. The aluminium frames of the greenhouses last pretty much forever, they don't really rust, and the glass lasts a very long time as well. All you have to do really is clean it, keep it clean, replace any panes that have broken over time, and that is pretty much it. I just give mine a clean every single year, and that's it, that's easy. But with these polytunnels, they're a bit harder to clean. They're not as tight, it's more difficult to get them tight. If you were to bury the plastic properly, you can get a nice tight cover and it'll be easy to clean with a brush, but because it's quite loose, getting a brush on there, you also risk damaging the cover with the cover being so thin as well. A commercial grade polytunnel will cost a lot more, but they'll last a lot longer as well, and the lower maintenance. It's much easier to keep it maintained versus this. There's much more maintenance involved with these budget polytunnels, but with all that being said, all the work involved, I've still got some really good crops from these polytunnels. I've grown peppers in here. I've had many, many years of successful crops from the peppers. I've grown some brilliant tomatoes in here, cucumbers, aubergines, and it's also provided space for young seedlings early in the season as well. It really does extend your growing season. You get a good few weeks head start with the growing season at the beginning, and it extends the growing season by quite a few weeks at the end as well. And things just grow faster in here, it's warmer. But not only is it warmer, you're also protected from the wind and the rain as well. That makes a big difference with the growth of plants. So here is the Outsunny polytunnel frame, which I got 3 seasons out of before the cover started to degrade so badly that it wasn't letting much light in. It was really dirty, very difficult to clean. The seams had broken, the vents had fallen through, and it was falling apart. So what I decided to do is turn this into a fruit cage, and that's what I'm going to do over the winter, and I'll get quite a few years out of this as a fruit cage. If you're going to get one of these polytunnels, I would highly recommend that you put anti-hotspot tape on the hoops, so that when the cover touches that metal, which warms up in the summer sun, it doesn't degrade the plastic, because when that metal gets hot, it can really degrade the plastic quite quickly. I dread to think how fast this cover would have degraded had I not put anti-hotspot tape on. I probably would have got a year less than what I did had I not done that. Now, I know a lot of these things in this video sound really negative, and I'm not necessarily saying that these polytunnels are a waste and you shouldn't get one. As I said, I've grown in polytunnels like this for the past 5-6 years, and I've had loads of success. Oh no! I'm just letting you know that there are things that you need to do to make it last longer if you want to do that, because you're not going to get a long time out of it as you would with a greenhouse or a commercial polytunnel. Those are going to last you much longer, although they are more expensive. This one here, I think it only cost about £140. The big one over there, £200. That is very, very cheap for the amount of space you're getting to grow crops for several seasons. That's really good value for money. But if you're looking for something long term, it's not going to last very long. And as I said, you're going to have to do things to make it stronger and make it last longer as well. For the beginner gardener, these are really, really good. They're budget friendly, beginner friendly, they're very easy to put together. You can literally get them erected in less than a day. That big one over there only took me like an hour to put up. It's really, really quick to put up. So to conclude, budget polytunnels like this, they're cheap, good value for money. You're going to get some use out of it, but just be prepared to do things to them to make them secure so they don't blow away, and you may also have to do things to them so that they last a little bit longer as well, which could potentially mean spending more money as well. If you're looking for something much more sturdy and longer lasting, which will probably also hold heating better as well, then consider getting a greenhouse or a commercial polytunnel, because these, even though they are more expensive, will last longer and they'll be much more durable. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, remember to hit that like button because it really does help out a lot, and if you haven't already and you want to see more videos in the future, then consider hitting that subscribe button. So that's all for now guys, I will see you in the next one. Happy gardening and stay safe.